Ancient history holds secrets that defy our modern understanding. This video uncovers 25 forgotten technologies, suggesting a prehistoric global civilization. By the end, you will see the overwhelming evidence for a connected ancient world that rewrites our past. We will investigate how a 2,000-year-old device could predict eclipses and why massive stones in Peru were cut with impossible precision. What does our timeline of human progress truly look like? Recovered from the depths of an ancient shipwreck, the Antikythera Mechanism stands as a silent witness to forgotten genius. This isn't a simple artifact. It is a complex clockwork of interlocking bronze gears, a device so advanced it has been called the world's first analog computer. For centuries, it lay encrusted and misunderstood, its true purpose hidden within calcified layers. Modern imaging technology finally revealed its secrets, uncovering a sophisticated system designed to predict the movements of the sun, moon, and planets. It could even forecast eclipses and track the cycle of the ancient Olympic Games. Experts like Dr. Tony Freeth have demonstrated it calculated the metonic cycle, a 19-year period where the phases of the moon align with the solar calendar. This was not just stargazing, it was precise mechanical computation. The existence of such an instrument in the 2nd century before the Common Era shatters our conventional timeline of technological progress. How could this level of engineering, rivaling the complexity of an 18th century Swiss watch, emerge in classical antiquity? The knowledge required to design and build such a device seems to have appeared fully formed, with no clear evolutionary path from simpler tools. This suggests the Greeks may not have been the original inventors, but perhaps the inheritors of a much older, far more sophisticated understanding of mechanics and astronomy, a knowledge base that was later lost to the sands of time. Far from the sea, another mystery is set in stone. Across the hills of Scotland and the landscapes of France, the ruins of ancient forts hold a secret that has baffled scientists for generations. Their massive stone walls are not merely stacked rock. They have been transformed, fused into a solid, glassy substance that sparkles in the light. This is vitrification, a process that requires a blistering heat of around 1,100 degrees Celsius to melt solid rock into a crude form of glass. That is a temperature comparable to a modern industrial foundry, not a simple bonfire or a primitive siege weapon. How could ancient people have achieved such an intense and widespread thermal event? The debate among archaeologists is fierce. Some suggest these forts were set ablaze during attacks, the wooden structures within burning so ferociously that they accidentally melted the surrounding stone. But this explanation struggles against the evidence. The vitrification is often consistent and thorough, found throughout the walls in a way that suggests a controlled application of heat, not a random conflagration. Could this have been a deliberate, lost technology, a method to strengthen these fortifications, turning rough stone walls into a single, monolithic, and nearly indestructible barrier against any invader? The sheer uniformity of this phenomenon across distant sites points to a shared, sophisticated knowledge. It suggests a prehistoric understanding of materials science that we never knew existed. Who were these master builders that could command the very elements to reforge their defenses? This thermal mastery, this ability to manipulate earth with fire, is a thread that leads us to even more impossible constructions. But the command of fire was not the only elemental force these ancients might have harnessed. In the dust of Mesopotamia, a far more subtle power appears to have been contained within a simple clay pot. Known today as the Baghdad Battery, this unassuming artifact is a collection of 3 simple components: a clay jar, a rolled copper cylinder, and an iron rod. It was found in the region of modern-day Iraq and dates back to the Parthian period over 2,000 years ago. On its own, each piece is unremarkable. But when assembled and filled with an acidic electrolyte like vinegar or grape juice, something remarkable happens. The chemical reaction between the acid and the two different metals generates a small but measurable electric current. The effect is basic electrochemistry, a primitive galvanic cell. The immediate question is, of course, what was it for? The purpose of this object is one of archaeology's most spirited debates. Some scholars propose it was used for electroplating, a method of depositing a thin layer of precious metal, like gold, onto the surface of a less valuable object. A handful of these cells linked together could have provided enough current to accomplish this, creating gilded artifacts through a process we thought was a modern invention. Others suggest a more mystical or medicinal application, perhaps using the mild tingling current for spiritual rituals or as a novel form of pain relief. While we may never know its true use with absolute certainty, the existence of the Baghdad Battery is profoundly significant. It demonstrates a tangible, working knowledge of electrical principles in an era we have always considered technologically primitive. It proves that the fundamental concept of generating and channeling electricity was not only understood, but was physically implemented. This single, strange jar forces us to ask a much larger question. Was this a one-off experiment, a curious accident that led nowhere? Or was it a surviving fragment of a much wider, now lost, understanding of electrical energy? If they could create a battery, what else could they power with it? The implications ripple outward, suggesting that the flickering torchlight of the ancient world might have been accompanied by other, far more mysterious sources of illumination. While we ponder the possibilities of ancient electricity, another tangible marvel stands firm against the relentless march of time. The concrete of the Roman Empire is not merely old. It is a material that has actively defied decay for over 2,000 years. Structures like the magnificent Pantheon, with its vast, unsupported dome, are not fragile relics. They are enduring monuments built with a technology we still struggle to match. Modern concrete, for all our advanced chemistry, often crumbles after a few decades, especially when exposed to seawater. Yet Roman harbors, submerged in the Mediterranean for centuries, remain solid and intact. The secret to this incredible longevity has only recently been uncovered by researchers at institutions like MIT. They discovered that the Roman formula included tiny, distinctive chunks of quicklime known as lime clasts. For years, these were dismissed as a sign of poor mixing, a careless mistake by ancient builders. The truth is far more brilliant. These lime clasts are the material's self-healing mechanism. When a tiny crack forms in the concrete, water seeps in. This water reacts with the lime clasts, triggering a chemical process that creates a crystalline substance. This new material effectively glues the crack back together, healing the wound automatically. It is a regenerative technology built right into the fabric of the stone, an idea modern material scientists are only now beginning to replicate in labs. How did the Romans develop such a sophisticated, almost living material? The precise recipe was lost with the empire's collapse, a stark reminder of how easily profound knowledge can vanish. This was not a simple mixture of sand and gravel. It represented a deep, specialized understanding of chemistry and material durability, a formula perfected over generations. One must wonder if the Romans were the original inventors, or if they too were improving upon a much older, even more ancient understanding of geopolymers. The sheer durability of their work raises a profound question about our own progress. Why does our modern concrete fail where theirs has triumphed for millennia? This theme of impossible endurance of structures built to last an eternity leads us to another corner of the world where stones were cut and joined with such precision that not even a blade of grass can slip between them. Scattered across the river deltas of Costa Rica, hundreds of massive stone spheres lie as if dropped by giants. These are not rough boulders. They are near-perfect spheres, some weighing over 15 tons, carved with a geometric precision that defies simple explanation. Fashioned from incredibly hard gabbro or sculpted from limestone, their surfaces are unnaturally smooth, their curves so true that they imply the use of advanced measuring tools far beyond simple rope and chisels. How did a prehistoric society achieve such flawless form and symmetry? Local indigenous legends offer a tantalizing clue. They say the stones were not laboriously carved and ground into shape. Instead, the stories tell of a mysterious substance, a softening agent that could temporarily turn solid rock into a pliable, clay-like material. This suggests a lost chemical knowledge, a method to manipulate the very hardness of stone itself, making the impossible task of shaping a 15-ton sphere suddenly seem achievable. The purpose of these enigmatic objects remains shrouded in mystery. Some are arranged in precise lines or geometric patterns, alignments that may have tracked the sun and moon, marking solstices or other celestial events. Others might have denoted territorial boundaries or signified the power and unity of the society that created them. The sheer, coordinated effort required to quarry, transport, and perfect these spheres points to a highly organized, skilled labor force, a society operating with shared scientific and cultural principles. This was not the work of an isolated village. It feels like the signature of a civilization with a unified vision, a people connected by knowledge that allowed them to impose perfect geometry onto the raw chaos of nature. And this drive to shape stone with impossible precision echoes in another part of the world, where the very mountains were carved into a city that should not exist. On a remote island in the vast Pacific, the Moai stand as silent, brooding giants. Carved from compressed volcanic ash, these monolithic statues are far more than simple stone figures. They are the embodiment of a sophisticated and organized society, one capable of feats that still stretch our imagination. The creation of a single Moai was a monumental undertaking. Quarried from the slopes of an extinct volcano, the statues were then transported, some weighing over 80 tons, for miles across the island's rugged terrain. For generations, the mystery of how they moved was a source of endless debate. One compelling theory, demonstrated in modern experiments, suggests the islanders used a clever walking method. By rocking the massive statue from side to side with coordinated teams pulling on ropes, they could make the multi-ton colossus appear to walk itself to its final platform. This was not brute force, it was applied physics, a deep understanding of leverage, balance, and rhythm. This feat alone speaks to a highly structured society with advanced engineering knowledge and a unified labor force. Recent archaeological studies have further shattered the old image of a doomed, isolated culture. Evidence now points to a complex and interconnected society, where the Moai served as powerful clan symbols, their distinct faces representing revered ancestors. The precision of their sharp brows, strong noses, and pursed lips was not accidental. It was the product of a refined artistic and technological tradition, passed down through generations. Some statues were even crowned with massive red stone topknots, each a separate cylinder of scoria rock weighing tons, carefully balanced on their heads. The knowledge required for such precise carving, transportation, and erection implies a cultural memory rich with technical skill. Was this knowledge developed entirely in isolation on this tiny speck of land, a unique flowering of human ingenuity against all odds. Or does the scale and sophistication of this work hint at external influences, at a shared, perhaps prehistoric, understanding of monumental construction that touched even the most remote corners of the world? The silent gaze of the Moai challenges us to look beyond the horizon, to other places where ancient hands reshaped the very mountains they lived upon. Etched across the arid plains of Peru, the Nazca Lines transform the desert floor into a colossal canvas. These are not small markings, but immense geoglyphs, some stretching over 1,000 feet, depicting a hummingbird, a spider, a monkey, and other intricate forms. Their existence poses a riddle of perspective. From the ground, they are little more than shallow grooves in the reddish-brown pebbles. Their full, breathtaking majesty is only revealed from high above, a viewpoint the creators themselves could never have physically achieved. This fundamental contradiction lies at the heart of the mystery. How did a people without flight conceive, design, and execute art on such a monumental scale, intended for an audience in the sky? The creation process itself was a feat of sophisticated low-tech engineering. By removing the dark, sun-baked surface stones to expose the lighter-colored soil beneath, the Nazca people created starkly contrasting lines that have endured for centuries. But the real genius was in the planning. Researchers believe they used a system of scaling up small-scale models. A master design, perhaps laid out on a grid, could have been transferred to the desert floor using a series of stakes and ropes, a testament to their profound understanding of geometry and proportion. The straight lines, some running perfectly for miles, demonstrate an uncanny ability for precise land surveying, maintaining their direction across hills and valleys without modern tools. The purpose of these vast drawings has fueled endless speculation. Were they a massive astronomical calendar, their animal shapes aligning with constellations on certain nights of the year? Or were they sacred pathways, walked by priests during rituals to invoke life-giving rain from the gods? The sheer scale of the project, requiring the coordinated labor of generations, points to a stable, deeply organized society united by a common vision and a shared pool of sophisticated knowledge. This was not random art. It was a deliberate, long-term project that required precise mathematical planning and an advanced observational understanding of the world, all to create messages for the heavens. The lines remain a permanent enigma, a testament to a culture that thought in scales we can barely comprehend from the ground. But this urge to reshape the land into giant symbols visible from above is not unique to Peru, suggesting a pattern of ancient thinking that reached across the globe. High in the Andes, another stoneworking marvel defies all conventional logic. The fortress of Sacsayhuamán stands guard over the ancient Inca capital of Cusco, a zigzagging wall constructed from blocks so massive they seem the work of giants. Some of these limestone and diorite stones weigh over 100 tons, yet they are cut and fitted together with a precision that borders on the impossible. The joints between these colossal blocks are so tight, so seamless, that not even a single piece of paper can be slid between them. This is not simple stacking. The stones feature complex, interlocking shapes with multiple angles and subtle curves, fitting together like an enormous, three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. How was this achieved? The standard explanation of stone and bronze tools seems utterly inadequate against the reality of such perfection. The rock itself is incredibly hard, and the intricate, rounded corners and inward-leaning surfaces would be a challenge for modern masons even with powered equipment. This has led to a compelling and controversial theory, one that echoes the legends of Costa Rica. Perhaps the builders possessed a lost method for softening stone. Imagine a plant-based chemical compound, a secret formula that could temporarily alter the surface hardness of the rock, allowing workers to mold and shape it almost like clay. Once the substance wore off, the stone would return to its original, diamond-like hardness, locking the blocks into a permanent, earthquake-resistant bond. This would explain the flowing, organic fits that look less like they were carved and more like they were pressed together while soft. The logistical genius is equally staggering. Quarrying these behemoths, transporting them across mountainous terrain, and then lifting them into place represents a breathtaking mastery of engineering and manpower. The walls of Sacsayhuamán are more than a fortress. They are a statement, a declaration of a power that understood the very essence of their materials in a way we have since forgotten. The seamless joins are not just a technical marvel. They are the signature of a civilization that had unlocked the secrets of stone itself, creating monuments not just for their time, but for all time. This level of stone mastery forces us to look even further back in time. In the rolling hills of southeastern Turkey, the Göbekli Tepe complex stands as a profound enigma, a site so ancient it rewrites the very first chapters of human civilization. Its massive, T-shaped limestone pillars, some weighing over 20 tons, are arranged in great stone circles. They tower over the landscape, each one intricately carved with bas-reliefs of foxes, scorpions, vultures, and lions. The sheer artistry and scale are staggering, but the true shock lies in its age. Göbekli Tepe was constructed over 11,000 years ago. This was a time before pottery, before the invention of writing, and crucially, before the dawn of agriculture. According to everything we thought we knew, humans at this point were simple hunter-gatherers, living in small, nomadic bands, constantly on the move in search of food. They should not have had the time, the resources, or the social organization to build a project of this magnitude. This site turns the standard narrative of human progress completely on its head. The conventional story is that farming came first. The stability of agriculture, the idea goes, produced surplus food, which allowed for specialization, which in turn led to complex society, religion, and monumental architecture. Göbekli Tepe flips this sequence. Here, the architecture appears to have come first. The construction of this vast ritual center would have required feeding and coordinating hundreds, perhaps thousands, of workers. This very need may have been the catalyst that forced people to develop organized agriculture to sustain such a large, non-mobile population. The lead archaeologist, Klaus Schmidt, championed this revolutionary idea, believing Göbekli Tepe was the world's first temple, a pilgrimage site that drew people from across the region, united by a shared belief system. The technical skill on display only deepens the mystery. The pillars were quarried from a nearby bedrock and then transported, likely on log rollers, to the site. The carvings are crisp and deep, executed with a master's hand. What tools could these prehistoric people have used to achieve such clean lines and smooth surfaces in solid limestone? We have found no metal tools from this period. They would have been working with flint or obsidian chisels, materials that seem utterly inadequate for the task. This suggests a level of tool-making sophistication we have yet to fully uncover. The existence of Göbekli Tepe forces a humbling admission. Our timeline is wrong. Complex society, advanced symbolic thought, and truly monumental engineering did not emerge slowly from the fields of early farmers. They were already present, fully formed, in the minds and hands of people we have long considered primitive. This was not the beginning of civilization. It was perhaps the flowering of a much older tradition, a forgotten world whose technological echoes we are only just beginning to hear. A testament to forgotten science stands in a quiet courtyard in Delhi. The Iron Pillar of Delhi has endured for over 1,600 years, exposed to monsoon rains and scorching sun, yet it shows no significant rust. This is not a coincidence. It is the product of a profound, empirical mastery of metallurgy that modern industry still studies with awe. Modern analysis reveals the pillar's secret lies in its unique composition. It contains a remarkably high phosphorus content and a very low sulfur and manganese content. This specific chemical cocktail, created through a sophisticated forging process, allows the pillar to form a thin, protective film on its surface. This film, a passive layer of mesowite, acts as an invisible shield, preventing oxygen and moisture from eating into the metal. It is a self-protecting, ancient form of stainless steel. Our modern attempts to replicate this on a large scale often fail, as we struggle to achieve the same perfect balance of elements and the specific hammering technique used by the blacksmiths. This was not a lucky accident. It represents a deep, working knowledge of alloy properties, a science developed through generations of observation and experimentation. The pillar's flawless preservation suggests it was not a singular miracle. It was likely part of a much larger, sophisticated tradition of ironworking, a school of technological thought that produced other advanced metal artifacts now lost to time. How many other such marvels have melted back into the earth? This mastery over metal was not confined to a single continent, as another civilization was achieving the impossible with stones no ordinary tool could ever cut. The legend of Damascus steel swords is a story written in metal, a tale of blades so sharp and resilient they seemed almost supernatural. Forged from a unique type of steel known as woots, which originated in India, these weapons were the pinnacle of ancient metallurgy. They were not merely strong, they possessed a rare combination of hardness and flexibility, allowing a warrior's sword to hold a razor edge in battle without shattering on impact. Their most famous feature was the mesmerizing, watery pattern on their surface, a rippling effect that looked like flowing silk or a wood grain. This was not mere decoration. It was the visual signature of an incredibly complex internal crystalline structure. Modern scientists, using electron microscopes, made a stunning discovery. Embedded within that steel were carbon nanotubes, tiny structures we associate with cutting-edge nanotechnology today. These nanotubes, formed through a specific and precise crucible forging process, gave the blades their legendary properties. The knowledge required to create this material was not written down in manuals. It was a craft passed orally from master to apprentice, a delicate chain of wisdom that was tragically broken by the 18th century. The secret vanished. Think about the implications. This was not a simple blacksmith hammering on hot iron. This was a sophisticated, multi-step manufacturing process that required a deep, intuitive understanding of material science and thermodynamics. The smiths had to control temperature, cooling rates, and chemical composition with an artist's touch, all without the aid of modern instruments. They were, in effect, nano-engineers working with fire and steel. One must wonder if they could achieve this with swords. What other tools or weapons were crafted with this lost knowledge? The existence of Damascus steel points to a specialized industrial tradition, a level of manufacturing sophistication that challenges our perception of ancient technological capabilities. It suggests that certain pockets of the ancient world were not just skilled artisans, but were pioneers in material science, creating alloys and composites whose secrets we are still trying to unravel. The mystery of encoded knowledge finds another voice on the island of Crete. Unearthed within the ancient palace of Phaistos, a simple clay disc holds a riddle that has stubbornly resisted translation for over a century. On its surface, a continuous spiral of 45 distinct symbols is perfectly pressed into the clay. We see human figures, birds, plants, and geometric shapes, each one cleanly defined and repeated. It is the method of its creation, however, that sends a shiver through our understanding of history. These symbols were not carved by hand. They were stamped onto the soft clay using pre-made seals, a form of movable type printing. This technology, a precursor to the printing press, would not reappear in the historical record for another 3,000 years. The uniformity is absolute, the spacing consistent, suggesting a standardized set of tools and a deliberate, repeatable process for recording information. What message was so important that it required this revolutionary method to preserve it? The theories are as varied as the symbols themselves. Some scholars argue it is a sacred hymn, a prayer to forgotten gods, stamped for ritual consistency. Others propose it is an early form of astronomical calendar, tracking celestial cycles along its coiled path. There are even suggestions it could be a legal document or a narrative of a great king's deeds. But without a key, without a single parallel text to provide context, the disc remains mute. Its very existence, however, speaks volumes. It points to a literate, organized society that valued the precise replication of complex ideas. The use of movable type implies a system, a school of thought that understood the power of standardized communication. Was the Phaistos Disc a unique local invention, a technological flash in the pan that was lost when its civilization fell? Or is it a lone survivor, a single piece of evidence from a much wider network of prehistoric cultures that shared not only ideas but the very tools for spreading them? This small clay artifact forces a profound question. How many other such devices made of perishable materials like wood or leather have simply crumbled to dust, erasing all evidence of a prehistoric information age? The disc is a ghost, a whisper of a system we can no longer hear. Another manuscript exists that makes even the Phaistos disc seem straightforward by comparison. The Voynich Manuscript is a book that actively resists understanding, a 240-page codex filled with flowing, elegant handwriting in a language that does not exist. Its alphabet is completely unknown, a script with distinctive, looping characters that has never been seen anywhere else on Earth. For over a century, the world's top cryptographers and linguists have tried to break its code, employing everything from military decoding techniques to complex computer algorithms. Yet the text remains stubbornly unreadable, its meaning locked away behind a cipher that has defeated every attempt. The words are not the only mystery. The book is lavishly illustrated with bizarre and intricate drawings. There are pages dedicated to unknown plants, species of flora that have never been identified by any botanist. These are not fantastical creations. They are drawn with such precise scientific detail that they suggest the author was working from real, observable specimens. Other sections feature intricate astronomical charts showing unfamiliar constellations and celestial cycles, alongside strange biological diagrams of tiny, naked women bathing in interconnected, green-tinted tubes and vessels. This is not a simple herbal or a medieval fantasy. The coherence of its visual language implies it contains a systematic body of knowledge, a textbook on subjects we can no longer identify. Carbon dating confirms the vellum pages were created in the early 15th century, but the knowledge within could be far older, copied from a much more ancient source that has since vanished. The sheer complexity of the illustrations points to an author with access to specialized, perhaps even global, information. Did the creator travel to distant lands to sketch these unrecorded plants? Did they possess an advanced understanding of human biology or astronomy that was later suppressed or lost? The most compelling and frustrating possibility is that this book represents a complete intellectual tradition for which we have no other reference, a single surviving leaf from a vast forest of forgotten learning. Its language was forgotten because the civilization that spoke it and the network of scholars who used it were wiped from history. The Voynich Manuscript is more than a puzzle. It is a ghost of a library, a silent scream of knowledge that we can see but cannot hear, reminding us that some of history's greatest secrets are still sitting on a shelf, waiting for a key we may never find. While the Voynich Manuscript remains an unbreakable code, another civilization perfected a revolutionary system for storing complex data without a single written word. High in the Andes, the Inca Empire managed a sprawling territory without a conventional script, relying instead on an intricate device made of knotted strings known as the quipu. At first glance, a quipu appears to be a simple collection of colorful cords hanging from a primary string, but this is a profound deception. Each element of the quipu is a deliberate piece of information. The colors of the strings, the types of knots, their specific positions along the cord, and even the direction the knots were tied all held distinct meanings. This was a three-dimensional, tactile language of record-keeping. For a long time, scholars believed quipus were merely accounting tools used to track stores of corn, numbers of llamas, or census data for the imperial bureaucracy. This in itself was a remarkable feat, a binary-like code using knots to represent numerical values in a base 10 system. But recent anthropological studies have uncovered a far more astonishing possibility. Certain quipus, particularly those from remote villages that maintained their traditions in secret after the Spanish conquest, appear to encode narratives. These could be historical chronicles, legal documents, or even epic poems, transforming the quipu from a simple calculator into a potential library of Inca history and culture. The skill required to create, and more importantly, to read these knotted texts was immense. Specialized scribes known as quipucamayos underwent years of training to master this complex system. They were the living databases of the empire, their memories and training allowing them to interpret the physical data stored in the strings. The efficiency of this system was what held a vast, mountainous empire together, allowing for the coordination of resources and labor across thousands of miles. How did such a sophisticated, non-written communication technology develop? Its origins are lost, but it hints at a shared administrative technology in the Andes, a way of thinking about information that was perfectly adapted to its environment. The tragic loss of this knowledge was swift and deliberate. The Spanish conquistadors, viewing the quipus as idolatrous or simply primitive, systematically destroyed them and suppressed the quipucamayos. With the death of these master readers, entire libraries of knotted knowledge became permanently silent. We are left with the physical artifacts, but the code to unlock their deepest stories has largely vanished. This raises a haunting parallel to our own digital age. Are we, with our fragile hard drives and rapidly obsolete file formats, creating a modern quipu, a vast store of data that future civilizations might find but never truly understand? The silent strings of the quipu challenge our most basic assumption about history, that it must be written to be remembered. They suggest that advanced civilization can flourish and complex ideas can be transmitted through channels we have only just begun to recognize. Deep within a secluded cave system in the mountains of China, a story emerged that would test the very limits of archaeology. In 1938, a Chinese archaeologist named Kai Pu-te reportedly discovered a series of neat burial sites. Arranged within them were the skeletal remains of a small-statured people with unusually large skulls. Alongside these bones lay hundreds of stone discs, each with a hole precisely carved in its center, resembling ancient phonograph records. These are the Dropa Stones. Their surface is said to be etched with a continuous, microscopic spiral of hieroglyphic symbols, a script so tiny it is nearly invisible to the naked eye. The tale takes an even more extraordinary turn with the claim that a professor in the 1960s managed to translate this minuscule writing. The alleged translation tells of a spacecraft that crashed in the Bayan Ula Mountains thousands of years ago. The survivors, the Dropa people, could not repair their vessel and were stranded on our planet. The stones were their recorded history, a permanent log of their plight carved into the very rock of their new world. The mainstream academic view is that the Dropa stones are a complete hoax, an elaborate fabrication with no verifiable evidence. The original discs have never been made available for proper, independent scientific testing, and the key figures in the story are shrouded in obscurity. Yet, despite the overwhelming skepticism, the legend persists with a powerful allure. The true significance of the Dropa stones may not lie in their disputed extraterrestrial origin, but in the underlying concept they represent. They embody the idea of an ancient, durable data storage technology. Imagine a civilization that chose stone as its medium for preserving critical information, creating a record designed to last for millennia, far outlasting parchment, paper, or any digital file we use today. This is a technology of permanence, a solution to the problem of historical decay that haunts every human society. The intense debate they spark highlights a fundamental tension in our study of the past. Where does myth end and history begin? The stones force us to confront how easily a genuine but forgotten, advanced artifact could be dismissed as pure fantasy simply because it does not fit our established timeline. If a culture could inscribe such complex writing onto stone, what other methods of information preservation have we mistakenly labeled as legend? This question of lost capabilities naturally extends beyond recording knowledge to the very power required to create it. What energy sources could have driven the advanced tools and machines of a prehistoric world? The sheer scale of the Dropa Stones legend gives way to a tangible, modern mystery just south of Miami. Edward Leedskalnin's Coral Castle rises from the Florida landscape as a monument to one man's stubborn secret. Between 1923 and 1951, this 5-foot-tall, 100-pound Latvian immigrant single-handedly quarried, shaped, and erected over 1,100 tons of Ulitic limestone. The blocks are colossal, some weighing as much as 30 tons, equivalent to a full-sized school bus. He achieved this alone, working mostly at night, shrouding his methods in absolute secrecy. When asked how he moved such immense stones, he would only give a cryptic smile and say that he understood the laws of weight and leverage. He claimed to have rediscovered the building secrets of the ancient Egyptians, the very same knowledge used to raise the pyramids. This was not the boast of a madman, but the quiet confidence of someone who had unlocked a forgotten principle. So how did he do it? Witnesses reported seeing him work with nothing more than simple hand tools, yet they also spoke of him placing his hands on the massive stones, humming, as if he were somehow neutralizing their weight. This has led to the compelling theory that Leedskalnin had rediscovered an ancient understanding of magnetic forces or even anti-gravity. He was known to build intricate devices containing magnets and radio parts, and he wrote pamphlets on magnetic current, arguing that all matter was simply individual magnets held together by a cosmic force. Perhaps he learned to manipulate that force to cancel out the pull of the Earth on specific objects. The precision of his work is another layer of the enigma. He carved a 9-ton gate that pivots so perfectly on a metal shaft that a child could push it open with a single finger. It was so perfectly balanced that it rotated effortlessly for decades, only requiring adjustment after it seized in the 1980s. This level of engineering implies a knowledge of physics and balance far beyond a simple stone mason. Edward Leedskalnin did not just build a castle. He built a permanent question mark. His achievement stands as a powerful 20th century echo of the same impossible stonework we see in Sacsayhuamán and the pyramids, suggesting that the lost science of the ancients was not entirely lost, but could be rediscovered by a single, determined individual. The Coral Castle forces us to ask if the greatest secrets of construction are not about brute force, but about a fundamental understanding of the unseen forces that hold our world together. The fortress of Sacsayhuamán stands guard over the ancient Inca capital of Cusco, a zigzagging wall constructed from blocks so massive they seem the work of giants. Some of these limestone and diorite stones weigh over 100 tons, yet they are cut and fitted together with a precision that borders on the impossible. The joints between these colossal blocks are so tight, so seamless, that not even a single piece of paper can be slid between them. This is not simple stacking. The stones feature complex, interlocking shapes with multiple angles and subtle curves, fitting together like an enormous, three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. How was this achieved? The standard explanation of stone and bronze tools seems utterly inadequate against the reality of such perfection. The rock itself is incredibly hard, and the intricate, rounded corners and inward-leaning surfaces would be a challenge for modern masons even with powered equipment. This has led to a compelling and controversial theory, one that echoes the legends of Costa Rica. Perhaps the builders possessed a lost method for softening stone. Imagine a plant-based chemical compound, a secret formula that could temporarily alter the surface hardness of the rock, allowing workers to mold and shape it almost like clay. Once the substance wore off, the stone would return to its original, diamond-like hardness, locking the blocks into a permanent, earthquake-resistant bond. This would explain the flowing, organic fits that look less like they were carved and more like they were pressed together while soft. The logistical genius is equally staggering. Quarrying these behemoths, transporting them across mountainous terrain, and then lifting them into place represents a breathtaking mastery of engineering and manpower. The walls of Sacsayhuamán are more than a fortress. They are a statement, a declaration of a power that understood the very essence of their materials in a way we have since forgotten. The seamless joins are not just a technical marvel. They are the signature of a civilization that had unlocked the secrets of stone itself, creating monuments not just for their time, but for all time. Across the English Channel, another forest of stone rises from the French countryside. The Karnak stones are a breathtaking spectacle, a sprawling arrangement of over 3,000 individual megaliths standing in eerie, precise rows. These are not random erections. They form vast alignments that stretch for miles across the landscape, an undertaking so immense it dwarfs even the most ambitious modern projects. Dating back to around 4,500 before the Common Era, this site is older than Stonehenge, older than the Great Pyramids of Giza. Its creators were a Neolithic people, yet the sophistication etched into the land speaks of a mind that saw the universe in a different way. The purpose of Karnak has been debated for centuries, but a compelling theory points to the sky. The alignments are not random. Specific rows and keystones are oriented to mark the sunrise on the solstices, those pivotal days when the sun reaches its extreme northern and southern points in the sky. Other formations may have tracked the complex cycles of the moon. This was not simple stargazing. It was a colossal, permanent astronomical observatory carved into the earth itself, a stone calendar that allowed its creators to predict the changing seasons with unerring accuracy. The implications of this are profound. To design such a system required a deep, communal understanding of geometry, surveying, and celestial mechanics. Imagine the generations of observation needed to note these subtle shifts in the heavens, and the even greater feat of translating that knowledge into a monumental, physical map on the ground. The scale of labor involved is almost incomprehensible. Quarrying, transporting, and erecting thousands of multi-ton stones required a highly organized society, one with shared goals, a unified leadership, and a common pool of scientific knowledge. This was a civilization in every sense of the word, operating with a clear, sophisticated vision. And Karnak is not alone. From the stone rows of Britain to the great circles of Senegal, similar megalithic structures appear across the globe, all echoing this same drive to build in stone on a colossal scale, often with clear astronomical intent. This pattern is too consistent, too widespread to be mere coincidence. It whispers of a shared heritage, a unified current of knowledge that flowed across the prehistoric world. What was this common source? Was it a single, lost mother culture whose explorers and teachers spread these principles? Or was it a fundamental understanding of the cosmos, independently rediscovered by different peoples, yet resulting in the same stunning architectural language? The silent, orderly ranks of the Karnak stones do not answer. They simply stand as a permanent question, challenging us to see the connections between continents and to wonder what else our ancient ancestors knew that we have only just begun to remember. High on the arid Bolivian Altiplano, the Gate of the Sun stands in solitary grandeur. This monumental archway, hewn from a single 10-ton block of volcanic andesite, is a masterpiece of forgotten engineering. Its surface is a dense tapestry of intricate bas-relief carvings, dominated by a central figure often identified as the staff god, surrounded by 48 winged attendants. The precision of these carvings is extraordinary, with each line and curve executed with a master's hand on a stone so hard it would quickly destroy modern metal tools. But this is more than just a religious icon. Many researchers argue the entire composition functions as a complex calendar. The 48 figures could represent a sophisticated counting system, tracking the cycles of the moon, the sun, and even the planet Venus. The gate itself is astronomically aligned, its doorway perfectly framing the sunrise on the equinox, casting a specific play of light and shadow across the carvings on those pivotal days of the year. This was not primitive worship. It was a fusion of cosmology, mathematics, and stoneworking technology, a permanent almanac set in stone. Tiwanaku was the heart of a vast pre-Columbian empire, and the technological principles perfected here, from this precise astronomical alignment to the methods for working impossible stone, did not remain isolated. The influence of Tiwanaku's culture and its building techniques can be found in artifacts and architecture across the Andes. The gate's symbolism, particularly the recurring staff god motif, appears thousands of miles away, suggesting a shared pan-regional belief system. This raises a pivotal question. How did such complex technological and ideological concepts travel across such vast and rugged distances? The answer lies not in isolation, but in connection. The spread of these ideas points to a network of exchange, a web of ancient global trade that moved more than just goods. It carried the very blueprint of civilization itself. The sheer diversity of the Uluburun Shipwreck's cargo paints a vivid picture of a world already deeply connected. Discovered off the coast of Turkey, this late Bronze Age vessel was a veritable floating warehouse, its hull packed with 10 tons of copper ingots from Cyprus, a ton of rare tin, gleaming ebony from Egypt, and precious ivory tusks from Africa. It carried glass ingots in vibrant cobalt blue, a material that required advanced, controlled temperature furnaces to produce. This was not a collection of local trinkets. It was a carefully curated manifest of international trade, a snapshot of a complex economic web that linked empires and kingdoms across the ancient Mediterranean. The presence of these standardized glass ingots is particularly telling. They were not finished goods, but raw material for artisans in distant ports, implying that the very knowledge of glassmaking, the recipes and the techniques, was a commodity in itself, transported along with the goods. This interconnectedness solves a persistent archaeological puzzle. Why do we find such strikingly similar technologies, like specific metal alloys or architectural styles, emerging in seemingly isolated cultures around the same time? They were not inventing these things in a vacuum. They were nodes in a vast prehistoric network, sharing ideas as readily as they traded spices and precious stones. The Uluburun ship is a material witness to this global conversation, proving that the exchange of innovation was as crucial as the exchange of goods. What other advanced knowledge was being passed from port to port across these ancient seas? The answer requires us to look beyond the cargo and consider the vessel itself and the sophisticated art of navigation that guided it across the open ocean. The vast Pacific Ocean was not a barrier but a highway. For the ancient Polynesians, its empty horizons were a map written in the language of nature itself. They embarked on voyages of thousands of miles across the open sea in double-hulled voyaging canoes, vessels engineered for stability and storage. With no compasses, no sextants, and no charts, they relied on a profound, accumulated science passed down through generations in chants and star lore. They were masters of wayfinding, a living navigation system that read the subtle clues of the universe. They memorized the precise rising and setting points of hundreds of stars, using them as fixed celestial signposts. They learned to interpret the patterns of ocean swells, feeling the direction of distant islands through the rhythm of the waves against the hull. They watched for the flight paths of specific seabirds, whose evening return to land could point the way to an unseen shore. They could even detect the faint, greenish reflection of a lagoon on the underside of distant clouds. This was not guesswork. It was a highly accurate, empirically proven technology of exploration that allowed them to discover and settle islands scattered across millions of square miles of ocean. This knowledge was so precise that modern navigators, like the legendary Moai, used these ancient techniques to sail from Hawaii to Tahiti without any modern instruments, proving their absolute effectiveness. The Polynesian expansion stands as one of humanity's greatest feats of exploration, a sustained, deliberate settlement of the last major habitable region on Earth. But if one culture could achieve this, why not others? The sophisticated understanding of ocean currents and celestial patterns required for such voyages suggests this was a specialized science, a form of knowledge that could easily have been developed and lost by other seafaring cultures in the distant past. Could the Phoenicians, the Minoans, or other prehistoric mariners have possessed similar, now forgotten, wayfinding skills? The Polynesian example opens a dramatic possibility. The oceans that we see as dividing continents may have been connectors for a prehistoric world, with skilled navigators using the stars as their guide to weave a web of contact across the globe. This idea of ancient global travel moves from theory to tantalizing possibility when we look beneath the waves, where the sunken remnants of lost voyages may still hold their secrets. Beneath the waves off the coast of Japan, a silent city sleeps. The Yonaguni Monument is a sprawling underwater rock formation, a labyrinth of massive stone terraces, perfectly straight steps, and sharp 90-degree angles that plunge into the deep blue. Its colossal platforms and towering pillars look like the ruins of a sunken plaza or a grand ceremonial center. The sheer scale is breathtaking, with the main structure rising over 80 feet from the seafloor. The central question is as deep as the water that conceals it. Is this a masterpiece of natural geology, or is it the work of human hands? geologists point to the region's unique sandstone, which can fracture along straight planes due to seismic activity, creating the illusion of carved blocks. Yet this explanation struggles to account for the sheer concentration of seemingly architectural features. Two massive, perfectly rectangular pillars stand near the structure's summit. A narrow, straight tunnel cuts through the rock. There are what appear to be carved star symbols and even a human face emerging from the stone. The most compelling argument for a human origin lies in its potential age. Sea levels were significantly lower during the last ice age, which ended roughly 12,000 years ago. At that time, this entire structure would have been high and dry on the coast, an ideal location for a settlement. If human, its construction would have to date to that remote era, a time when, according to our standard history, humans were primitive hunter-gatherers. The implications are staggering. It suggests a civilization not only advanced enough to quarry and shape stone on a monumental scale, but one that thrived along coastlines that are now drowned. This single site forces us to reconsider the entire map of prehistory. If Yonaguni is artificial, how many other coastal civilizations were lost when the glaciers melted and the oceans rose? This idea transforms from a theory into a tangible field of study when we consider other submerged sites, like the complex structures found off the coast of Gujarat in India or the mysterious walls beneath the waters of Bimini. These underwater ruins are not isolated anomalies. They are potential fragments of a forgotten world, a global network of cultures that built their cities on shorelines that vanished beneath the waves. Their disappearance may have been the very event that shattered this prehistoric global civilization, leaving only its most inland and mountainous outposts like Göbekli Tepe as clues to its former existence. The silent stones of Yonaguni challenge us to look beyond the current coastlines and ask what other knowledge sank with these lost worlds. This question of lost capability extends beyond construction to the most intimate of sciences, the art of healing the human body itself. The human skull is a fragile vessel, a delicate casing for the very essence of life. Yet thousands of years ago, in the high Andes of ancient Peru, healers performed a surgery that seems to defy this basic truth. They carefully drilled or cut holes into the living skull, a procedure we know as trepanation. The discovery of these skulls is not what is most shocking. It is the clear evidence of survival. On many specimens, the bone around the surgical opening shows smooth, healed edges, a testament to the body's recovery over weeks or months. This was not a death sentence. It was a calculated medical intervention with a remarkably high success rate. How did these ancient surgeons achieve such a feat without modern antiseptics or anesthesia? The tools themselves provide a clue. They used obsidian blades, a form of volcanic glass that can be knapped to a sharpness exceeding modern surgical steel. This lithic technology provided a cutting edge so fine and clean it minimized tissue damage and reduced the risk of infection, but the tools are only part of the story. The survival of these patients implies a profound, practical knowledge of human anatomy. These surgeons knew precisely where they could cut on the cranium to relieve pressure or address an injury without causing fatal damage to the brain beneath. They likely understood the need for cleanliness, perhaps using herbal poultices with natural antibacterial properties to ward off infection. They must have also possessed effective methods for pain management, possibly using powerful local anesthetics derived from plants like coca. This was not a brutal, desperate act. It was a refined surgical practice, and it was not unique to Peru. Evidence of trepanation appears in ancient cultures across Europe, Africa, and Asia, a medical thread connecting disparate parts of the globe. How did this complex understanding of surgery demanding a mastery of anatomy, tool-making, and pharmacology, appear in so many places. Was it a universal human discovery, a logical step when confronted with head injuries and illness? Or does its widespread practice hint at a deeper, shared pool of medical knowledge that flowed across the ancient world, a forgotten system of healing that understood the body in ways we are only now beginning to appreciate? The healed skulls of Peru are silent witnesses to a lost chapter in medicine, forcing us to ask what other sophisticated health practices have been forgotten by time. The human skull was not the only frontier for ancient surgeons. In the river valleys of India, a medical tradition was being codified that would rival modern textbooks in its scope and precision. The Sushruta Samhita, an Ayurvedic compendium attributed to the sage Sushruta, is far more than a collection of herbal remedies. It is a systematic surgical manual describing over 120 distinct classes of instruments, from scalpels and forceps to specialized tubes and probes, many of which bear a striking resemblance to the tools found in a modern operating theater. The text details complex procedures that seem impossibly advanced for their time. It explains how to perform cataract surgery by couching the clouded lens, a delicate maneuver that restored sight. It lays out intricate methods for plastic reconstruction of the nose and ears, techniques that would not be rediscovered in the West for centuries. Beyond surgery, the text catalogues over 1,000 diseases and describes the medicinal properties of more than 700 plants, organizing this vast knowledge into a coherent diagnostic and therapeutic system. This was not a scattered set of folk cures. It was a true science of medicine built upon generations, perhaps millennia, of meticulous observation and clinical experience. The sheer volume of this accumulated wisdom forces a profound question. How could such a detailed and systematic body of knowledge emerge without the foundational tools we consider essential for medical progress, like the microscope or an understanding of germ theory? The answer may lie not in isolation, but in connection. The principles of Ayurveda, with its focus on balance and natural healing, show intriguing parallels with medical traditions in ancient China, Mesopotamia, and Greece. This suggests the existence of a prehistoric network of healing knowledge, where ideas about surgery, anatomy, and pharmacology were exchanged along the same trade routes that carried spices and silks. The Sushruta Samhita stands as a monumental testament to this lost global conversation, a library of health that challenges our timeline of medical discovery. But this sophisticated care for the human body required a stable foundation, a reliable source of food that could sustain the populations needed to support such specialized learning. The next great leap would come not from the surgeon's table, but from the earth itself. The sprawling city of Tenochtitlan was built not just on land, but on water. To feed its immense population, the Aztecs engineered a breathtaking agricultural technology directly into the shallow lake bed. These were the Chinampas, often called floating gardens, though they were far more sophisticated than the name implies. They were not floating at all, but artificial islands constructed from a brilliant, layered recipe. Workers wove huge mats from reeds and vines, then piled them high with rich mud scooped from the lake bottom. They layered this with decaying vegetation and other organic matter, creating a fertile, buoyant, and incredibly productive plot of land. But the genius was in the system. Each rectangular Chinampa was separated by a narrow canal, creating a perfect grid of land and water. These canals were not just for canoe transport. They were the lifeblood of the farms, acting as a natural irrigation system that kept the root systems constantly hydrated. The water itself was teeming with life, and mud from the canal bottoms, rich in nutrients, was regularly dredged and added back to the Chinampas, creating a continuous cycle of fertilization. This was a self-sustaining ecosystem of food production, a form of hydroponics and soil science that allowed for up to 7 harvests a year. The result was an agricultural output that could support one of the largest cities in the world at the time. This was not simple farming. It was civil engineering and ecological management on a grand scale, a testament to a society that understood how to work in harmony with its environment to solve the fundamental problem of feeding a metropolis. And this knowledge was not confined to Mesoamerica. On the high plains of Bolivia, the pre-Incan Tiwanaku culture built a strikingly similar system of raised fields known as suca colas. Vast networks of these water-filled canals and elevated planting platforms created microclimates that protected crops from frost and dramatically increased yields. How could two cultures, separated by thousands of miles and impassable terrain, develop such nearly identical solutions? The existence of these parallel agricultural technologies suggests a powerful possibility. Was this a case of independent invention, a logical human response to similar environmental challenges? Or does it point to a deeper, shared pool of knowledge? Perhaps the principles of advanced agriculture, like the principles of astronomy and stoneworking, were part of a common toolkit that spread across the ancient world, allowing disparate civilizations to master their landscapes and build great cities. If they could achieve such mastery over land and water to grow food, what other elemental forces did they learn to command? Our final forgotten technology takes us to the very limits of ancient possibility, to the controversial idea of power itself. Deep within the temple of Hathor at Dendera, a stone relief ignites a modern firestorm of debate. Etched onto a wall in a sealed crypt, the image is startlingly anachronistic. It shows a large, bulb-shaped object, and inside it, a snake uncoils in a long, wavy line, its head resting on a kind of flower-shaped stand. A cable-like cord seems to connect the bulb to a box, which is held by a priest-like figure, while a baboon-like god stands nearby with 2 knives. To the conventional Egyptologist, this is purely symbolic, a representation of the creation myth involving the snake god emerging from a lotus flower. But to others, this explanation feels incomplete. The visual resemblance to a modern Crookes tube, an early electrical device, is simply too compelling to ignore. Could this be a literal depiction of an ancient lighting technology? The theory suggests the snake represents a glowing filament, the bulb is a glass enclosure, the cord is an electrical cable, and the box is a power source, perhaps even a larger version of the Baghdad Battery. The entire scene in this interpretation is not a myth but a technical diagram. Of course, skepticism is the default and necessary position. There are no physical remains of such bulbs, no wiring, no switches. But what if the technology was so rare, so sacred, and so dependent on perishable materials that all evidence has simply decayed? The reliefs themselves are found in windowless underground chambers, places where torch smoke would have been unbearable and oxygen-consuming. How did the artist see to carve these intricate scenes in such profound darkness? The Dendera relief stands as the ultimate symbol of this entire investigation. It represents the tantalizing, controversial edge of our understanding, where myth and technology blur. It forces us to ask if our ancestors were describing the world of the gods, or simply documenting the advanced tools of their own civilization. And so we are left with 25 scattered pieces of an enormous puzzle. From the astronomical computer of Antikythera to the self-healing Roman concrete, from the vitrified forts of Scotland to the impossible stonework of Sacsayhuamán, a pattern emerges that is impossible to ignore. These are not random anomalies, they are the echoes of something profound. Individually, each artifact can be explained away, rationalized, or labeled an outlier. But collectively, they form a chorus of evidence that our standard timeline of human progress is at best incomplete and at worst fundamentally wrong. The evidence points to a world where sophisticated knowledge of astronomy, geology, chemistry, and engineering was not the end point of civilization, but in many cases the starting point. The existence of Göbekli Tepe alone proves that complex society and monumental architecture predated agriculture, turning our foundational story on its head. The global distribution of these technologies, from the Polynesian star navigators to the Andean skull surgeons, suggests this was not an isolated phenomenon. It hints at a prehistoric world that was far more interconnected than we ever imagined, a web of trade and ideas that spanned oceans and continents. How do all these pieces fit together? Imagine a prehistoric global civilization, not as a single empire ruling the world, but as a network of advanced cultures sharing a common pool of sophisticated knowledge. This network would have had master astronomers, geologists, and engineers. They understood the principles of electricity, the chemistry of alloys, and the physics of monumental construction. They could predict celestial events with precision, soften stone, and perform complex medical surgeries. Then something happened. A cataclysm, perhaps a rapid rise in sea levels at the end of the last ice age, shattered this network. It drowned their coastal cities and severed their global connections. The knowledge fragmented. Isolated groups clung to pieces of the old science, which over generations devolved into legend, ritual, and misunderstood technology. The Greeks inherited a fragment of astronomy and built the Antikythera Mechanism. The Romans perfected a piece of material science with their concrete. The Incas held onto a thread of stoneworking mastery, but the full, integrated system was lost. We are not looking at the slow, linear ascent of humanity from primitivism. We are likely seeing the recovery, the rebuilding after a great forgetting. The evidence is all around us, carved in stone, buried in shipwrecks, and etched into the very landscape. The question is no longer if such a civilization could have existed, but how we can open our minds to recognize its ghostly signature in the ruins it left behind. These 25 forgotten technologies are not isolated curiosities. They are individual threads in a single, vast tapestry. When you step back, the overarching pattern is undeniable. We see a recurring mastery of stone, a deep understanding of metal, a sophisticated grasp of the heavens, and the clear evidence of long-distance trade. The Antikythera Mechanism is a Greek echo of an older astronomical science. The Nazca Lines are a Peruvian expression of the same geometric principles found at Karnak. The self-healing Roman concrete and the rust-proof iron pillar of Delhi are two different answers to the same material science problem. The conventional explanation for all this is independent invention, the idea that different cultures facing similar challenges simply arrived at the same brilliant solutions by chance. But the similarities are too specific, too profound, and in some cases too simultaneous to be mere coincidence. This does not point to a single, globe-spanning empire ruling the world. Instead, it suggests a prehistoric network, a web of interconnected societies that exchanged goods, people, and, most importantly, ideas. Knowledge itself was the most valuable commodity, traveling along ancient sea lanes and overland trade routes, linking the Mediterranean to the Indus Valley and the Andes to the Pacific Islands. This interconnected world would have had its master astronomers, its geologist engineers, and its metallurgist priests, all sharing a common pool of technological principles. The implications for our understanding of human history are staggering. Our traditional timeline is not just missing a few pages, it is missing an entire volume. Human progress was not a slow, linear crawl from primitivism. It was a cycle of rise, connection, catastrophic collapse, and a long, slow recovery from the fragments. The world we have excavated is not the story of our beginnings, but the story of our rebuilding after a great forgetting. The ghost of this lost global civilization is not found in one single ruin, but in the haunting, consistent echoes of its technology, scattered across every continent, waiting for us to finally see the connections. This collection of ancient marvels forms a single, undeniable pattern. The seamless stonework of Sacsayhuamán, the rust-proof iron pillar, and the celestial computer of Antikythera are not random accidents of history. They are individual chapters from the same forgotten book. Each one represents a different facet of a unified, sophisticated understanding of the world, a knowledge base that appears to have been shared across vast distances. The evidence no longer suggests isolated genius, but a connected network of innovation. We are left with a profound realization. Our traditional timeline of human progress, that slow march from primitive hunter-gatherers to modern civilization, is fundamentally incomplete. It is not a simple line, but a cycle. These 25 technologies are the scattered fragments of a peak, a high point of a prehistoric global civilization that was later shattered, perhaps by the great floods that ended the last ice age. What we have called the dawn of civilization was likely the embers of a much older fire, a long and difficult recovery from a catastrophic collapse. The ghost of this lost world is not found in one single ruin, but in the haunting, consistent echoes of its technology, waiting for us to finally see the connections. If these mysteries have reshaped your view of the past, we would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective adds another piece to this great puzzle. For more journeys into history's greatest enigmas, subscribe and join us as we continue to uncover humanity's lost legacy. Thank you for watching.